The Democrats are panicking right now, and I need you to understand exactly why. For the first time in modern political history, they cannot find the remote control. They have been flipping through channels trying to reach Black America, and every single frequency they use to rely on is static. The boule is not picking up the phone, or more accurately, nobody cares when they do. Let me set this up properly because this moment is historic. For generations, the political machinery in this country operated on a very simple arrangement. The boule, that class of Black elites embedded in politics, academia, fraternal organizations, and civil rights institutions, served as the delivery system. They were the middlemen. The Democrats would make promises, the boule would package those promises in culturally familiar language, and then the boule would deliver millions of Black votes like a courier dropping off a package. That system ran like clockwork for decades. Election after election, cycle after cycle, the same playbook, the same results. Black America showed up, voted overwhelmingly in one direction, and received almost nothing of structural value in return. But the boule kept their seats at the table, and that was the real transaction. Now that system is collapsing, and the collapse is not theoretical. It is visible. You can see it in the polling. You can see it in the tone of political commentary. You can see it in the desperation of Democratic strategists who suddenly sound like they are begging. And the reason it is collapsing is because the grassroots rose up and said, "We are done being delivered." This is the part that fascinates me psychologically. The battle right now is not really about policy. It is not about platforms or campaign promises. The battle is about something much deeper. It is about who holds the emotional trust of foundational Black Americans. Who has the heart? Because whoever has the heart has the influence. And whoever has the influence shapes the direction of the most culturally powerful community on this planet. The boule had that heart for a long time, not because they earned it, but because they were positioned as the only option. When you control the institutions, when you run the organizations, when you dominate the academic spaces and the political pipelines, you create the illusion that you are the community's voice. But an illusion only works as long as nobody looks behind the curtain. The grassroots pulled that curtain back, and what people saw behind it was a class of gatekeepers who had been negotiating on behalf of Black America without Black America's actual consent. Now here's where the Democrats made their critical miscalculation. They assumed the boule's collapse would create a vacuum they could fill directly. They thought, okay, if the old guard is losing credibility, we will just go straight to Black voters ourselves. But they do not know how to talk to Black people without a translator. That is the truth of it. The entire Democratic engagement strategy with Black America was built on intermediaries. They do not have a direct relationship with the community because they never needed one. The boule handled that. So now the boule is losing relevance, and the needed one. The boule handled that. So now the boule is losing relevance. And the Democrats are standing in the middle of a room full of people they have taken for granted for 60 years, and they have nothing to say that anyone wants to hear. The grassroots movement did not just replace the boule, it fundamentally changed the terms of engagement. The grassroots is not asking for a seat at anyone's table. The grassroots is building its own table. It is defining its own priorities. It is centering lineage. It is centering reciprocity. It is centering tangible returns for political participation. And it is refusing to accept symbolism as a substitute for substance. That shift terrifies the political establishment because it means Black votes are no longer automatic. They have to be earned, and earning them requires delivering something real. Let me tell you what the Democrats are doing wrong right now, because it is almost textbook. They are responding to a loss of emotional connection with intellectual arguments. They keep saying, look at the alternative, look how bad the other side is. You have to come back to us because where else are you going to go? That is not persuasion. That is coercion dressed up in political language. And Black Americans, particularly foundational Black Americans who have been on this soil for centuries and have heard every version of that argument, are done being scared into compliance. Fear worked when there were no alternatives. The grassroots created an alternative, and that alternative is independent political thought. The heart of Black America now beats in barbershops and beauty salons, in group chats and comment sections, in podcasts and live streams run by ordinary people who have no institutional backing but carry the trust of millions. That trust was not granted by a title or a position. It was earned through consistency, through truth-telling, through the willingness to say what the Boule would never say, because the Boule's funding depended on keeping certain truths quiet. This is what a real power shift looks like. It is not dramatic in the way Hollywood portrays it. There is no single moment, no cinematic confrontation. It is millions of people quietly and simultaneously deciding that the old arrangement no longer serves them. It is the slow, irreversible transfer of credibility from the credentialed class to the people who actually live the experience every single day. The Democrats are upset because they invested in a system and that system stopped producing returns. But they are making the mistake of blaming the grassroots for the collapse instead of examining why the Boule lost credibility in the first place. The Boule did not fall because the grassroots attacked it. The Boule fell because it stopped being useful to the people it claimed to represent. That is always how these collapses happen. The base does not revolt out of anger alone. The base revolts when it realizes the people at the top were never actually working for them. So who has the heart of Black America? Not the party that keeps demanding loyalty, not the institutions that keep issuing statements nobody reads, not the academics writing papers nobody outside their department will ever see. The heart belongs to the people who showed up with the truth when the truth was uncomfortable. The grassroots earned it, not with funding or credentials, but with courage. And that is something you cannot buy, you cannot legislate, and you certainly cannot take back once it is given. Keeps the Boule up at night, it is not that they lost power. They still have titles, they still have positions, they still sit at tables most of us will never see. What keeps them up at night is that they lost control and they cannot figure out how to get it back. Let me explain something to you. The Boule has operated for over a century as the gatekeeper class within Black America. These are the Black elites in politics, in academia, in civil rights organizations who were selected, and I do mean selected, to serve as intermediaries between Black communities and white institutional power. Their job was never to liberate us. Their job was to manage us, to translate our rage into voter turnout, to convert our resistance into respectability, to take every revolutionary impulse that rose up from the grassroots and sand it down into something comfortable enough for white power structures to digest. And for a very long time, that model worked. It worked because control required centralization. You needed a handful of recognized leaders who could speak on behalf of millions. You needed organizations with headquarters, with boards, with chains of command. You needed a top-down structure because that is what made the Black vote deliverable. That is what made Black resistance dilutable. The Boule was the bottleneck, and everything had to flow through them. But here is where the game changed. The delineation movement did something that no previous movement could do in quite the same way. It decentralized the conversation. Delineation does not have a single leader to co-opt. It does not have a headquarters to infiltrate. It does not have a board of directors to pressure. It is a framework, a lens, a way of thinking that spreads laterally across millions of minds, and you cannot put a leash on an idea that has no single throat. This is what the Boule fundamentally does not understand. They keep looking for the head of the snake because every system they have ever operated within has a head. Every institution they have navigated has a hierarchy. So they assume delineation must have one too. They are scanning for the spokesperson. They are waiting for someone to emerge as the face of it so they can either recruit that person, discredit that person, or replace that person. And they keep coming up empty because delineation is not built that way. Now let me break down the psychology of this because it is fascinating. The Boule is experiencing what happens to any managerial class when the population they manage develops independent analysis. Their entire value proposition was based on being the interpreters. They told white institutions what Black people wanted, and they told Black people what was realistic to expect. They were the translators, and they controlled the narrative in both directions. But when people begin to delineate for themselves, when they start identifying lineage-based interests independently of what any elite class tells them to prioritize, the translator becomes irrelevant. You do not need someone to speak for you when you have already defined your own terms. And this is why you see the panic. Watch the response carefully. When Boule-adjacent voices attack delineation, they almost never engage the actual framework. They attack the tone. They attack the people sharing it. They call it divisive without ever explaining what unity has actually produced under their leadership. They say it is dangerous without specifying who exactly it endangers, because the truth is, delineation is only dangerous to those whose influence depends on Black people remaining a monolith that can be mobilized and directed from above. Think about what the Boule delivered in exchange for their position. They delivered the Black vote cycle after cycle, and what did the community receive? Incremental crumbs dressed up as progress, symbolic representation without structural change, photo opportunities without policy transformation. The deal was never designed to benefit the masses. The deal was designed to benefit the brokers, the people in the middle who got proximity to power by promising they could keep the Black population politically predictable. Delineation breaks that predictability, and predictability was the entire product. If you cannot guarantee that Black voters will show up and vote as a bloc for a specific party regardless of outcomes, then you have nothing to sell. The Boule's currency was control over Black political behavior, and that currency is rapidly devaluing. Here is what I need you to understand. This is not about hating successful Black people. This is about identifying a structural role that certain Black elites have played in maintaining a system that extracts from the many to benefit the few. There are brilliant Black academics, powerful Black politicians, and accomplished Black professionals who genuinely serve their community's interests. This is not about them. This is about the class function, the specific role of delivering Black compliance to power structures that have never been invested in Black liberation. The delineation movement represents something the Boule has never had to face before, which is a decentralized, ideologically coherent framework that does not need their permission, their endorsement, or their approval to spread. Every previous movement could be captured because every previous movement had a capture point, a leader to assassinate, an organization to defund, a message to co-opt. Delineation keeps moving because it lives in the critical thinking of ordinary people who have decided they no longer need a gatekeeper to define their interests for them. So no, the Boule did not lose power. They still have access. They still have titles. They still have networks. What they lost is the ability to control what Black people think, how Black people organize, and who Black people listen to. And in the game they were playing, control was the only thing that mattered. Without it, the power is just a costume. The question is not what happens to the Boule. The question is what happens when millions of Black people realize the gatekeepers never held the key. We did.
Are my sister, my queen. I genuinely don't want to do this. You are my sister, my queen. But y'all make it so easy though. Why does it always have to be my sister, my queen? Why? Why do y'all have to carry water for the Democrats like this? Like I legitimately I borderline feel bad. Like it's like I'm picking on you. But I'm not. I don't want to. But y'all make it so easy. Y'all make it so easy. And the foolishness is in abundance when it comes to how these liberal melanated queens, they tap dance so hard for the Democrats. They go so hard in the paint, just saying anything. And listen to this here now. Listen to this here. Let me explain. Let me tell you something. You thought, Black slaves built America, right? Black descendants of slaves and all that. You thought they built America? No, that's not true. That's a lie. But what you're getting ready to hear is the truth. You're getting ready to find out who actually built America, okay? Check this out. It's always got to be my sister, my queen.
Trump's speech wasn't a list of accomplishments. It was more like an obituary for the country working people built and a celebration for the billionaires who want to strip it for parts. An obituary for our right to vote, for the ability to make rent or the chance to own a home, for good jobs with the right to organize and strike and stick up for each other. Trump's policies are hurting our communities. Working people feel it every single day. Stupid.
So, as you can see, working people built this country, okay? If you thought this country was built by slaves, the descendant of slaves, all that good stuff, nah. It was built by working people. And as a matter of fact, now that I think about it, at least if you let Democrats tell it, if you let them tell it, people of color were enslaved. Okay, it was people of color. No, from now on, moving forward, we're going to say enslaved peoples. See, y'all love to sit up here and you let these folks lie to you about, oh my God, the MAGA, they're trying to erase our history. They erase your history like right in front of your face. Like they're talking to you. This message is directed to you and they're telling you, that, working people built the country. Look at how people like this woman here. I don't even remember what her name is. It really doesn't matter. I'm sure somebody knows. You drop it in the comment section. I can't remember at the moment what her name is. But I mean, how shameful is it to just sell off your legacy, sell off your heritage, sell off your history, not even for 20 pieces of silver, for trinkets. For trinkets. You sold your history for that big ass suit you got on. That suit look crazy. Big body suit she wearing. Look at this. You are my sister, my queen. You are my sister, my queen. Look goofy as hell with that big suit on. That's what you sold everything out. You see, but I'm the sellout, right? And I'll gladly wear the hat and the crown of the sellout. I'll wear it. Shout out to all my sellouts, sellouts united. But that's crazy work. That's crazy work. She just threw all your history away in the trash because, people of color were enslaved, I guess, or working peoples were enslaved, or enslaved peoples, whatever we're going to call it now. I read something once before where they said people of color were lynched during the time of slavery. People of color were lynched. Like, okay, I guess it's people of color now. Anyways. Just keep voting blue no matter who, I guess. This is what you guys love. This is what you guys vote for. I'm the sellout, I guess. But, once again, sellouts united. You see right there, my only regret was not selling out sooner.